My name is Christine Cummings. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Grocers and Food Producers Association. We are a membership-based trade group representing Main Street businesses, including independently owned and operated grocery stores, convenience stores, supermarkets, as well as food and beverage producers and processors. And we have a variety of affiliated service groups that are partners of ours as well. We primarily are a legislative advocacy organization. My office is within walking distance of the State House here in Augusta. I spend much of my time over at the State House working with the legislature on policy work. Our motto is ensuring that Maine is a food-friendly place to do business. So I encourage anyone who has any questions about what's happening from a policy perspective to please reach out. And thanks so much for joining us this morning. Turn it over to Bill.
Going to be unmuted, I guess. Good morning. I'm Bill Soretta, Executive Director of Fork Food Lab in Portland. Fork is a shared commercial kitchen food business incubator with currently about 60 members. We are in the process of building out and moving to a new facility in South Portland that will increase our capacity by a factor of 5. We'll be around 90 members when we move. We provide services to a variety of food businesses, and in our new facility we'll be adding some capacity for scheduled and limited artisanal co-packing, co-processing of products, in addition to providing that service for our members. And now I will turn it over to Sue.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sue Hansen, and I manage the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs Food Accelerator programs, which are specifically designed for established food and beverage and ag companies looking to scale up, and more mature food companies who are ready to more aggressively expand regionally and nationally. Our programs include everything from mentoring and consulting from industry experts, learning workshops and webinars focused on the food and beverage industry, access to technical assistance resources and funding, and access to market data, really all to help strengthen and grow Maine food and beverage businesses. And in the last 5 years, thanks to our partnership with Focus Maine, over 70 food companies have been through our programs. An additional 40 to 50 have been through our Top Gun startup program that many of you are probably familiar with. In addition to the 3 of us food program managers, we all have over 25 years experience working in the food industry, but we also have a network of over 250 mentors representing multiple areas and levels of expertise across multiple industries. And over 65 of those mentors have direct food industry experience. So today I'm excited to introduce our speakers today, who are also members of the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs, or MCE for short, mentor network. They are not only highly skilled and experienced working with food and beverage brands, but they love to support Maine food and beverage brands in any capacity they can, and have been a great resource to MCE. So we really appreciate that. So we have Ian Pasquarelli, who's the founder and CEO of the Kitchen Network, and Jess Caven, who's co-founder and principal of Generation CPG. So Ian and Jess, please take it from here to further introduce yourselves and kick off session 3 in our last session of this series.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Pasquarelli. As Sue mentioned, I'm a mentor for the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs. I'm originally from Holton, up in Aroostook County. So I grew up and was raised in Maine. I graduated from the University of Maine in food science and nutrition, and just a big advocate of Maine-based food businesses in general. I'm located in Boston now, where I operate the Kitchen Network, which is a product development and consulting company for the food industry, where we do everything from developing food in every category: salty snack, refrigerated, frozen, beverage, across the board. And then I'm also working to develop some software to help small to mid-sized food businesses manage their inventory. Then I also have a beverage brand, which I'm helping launch in my spare time. So it's a pleasure to be here doing these webinars. The first 2 were great, super fun and engaging. Really excited to wrap up this 3rd one here with you today. And now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jess.
Thanks so much, Ian. I'm Jess Caven, the co-founder of Generation CPG, and we are a supply chain and operations consulting agency that helps launch food, beverage, and wellness brands. I live in Mid-Coast, Maine, even though I am not originally from here. I'm from upstate New York, so don't hold that against me. But I've worked in the CPG industry for about 15 years on the operations and supply chain side of things, and I'm excited to be here today.
All right, so the key takeaways from today's session, and Yes, we're focusing on co-manufacturing for others, and hopefully a lot of you who attended the first two webinars are also here today because not only are we coming at this from a perspective of, okay, maybe I'm a facility that's interested in co-packing, but ideally we also want to get other entrepreneurs and other food businesses an understanding from the co-manufacturer's point of view of why they may need to charge for certain things, or why they have minimum order quantities, or why they may operate in certain aspects. So hopefully a lot of you are here participating in the third one and can gain a lot from this perspective of how the co-manufacturer looks at these projects. But also, if you are considering co-manufacturing, this is going to be really important for you to take away these things as well. So the first thing we're going to go over is understanding fit and business strategy. Am I actually set up to be co-manufacturing? And then how do I approach this as a business? Because this is a business decision. This is in many ways a separate business from what you do now. And looking at those as two separate things is really important to consider if this is a right decision for you. The next thing down, we have operations capability, capacity, and management. So A, are you capable of manufacturing something specific, and what is that? Do you have the capacity? Now, that is a very big question. We're going to dig into that deeper, but capacity means many different things in terms of equipment, time, staff, storage, all of those things go into capacity. That's a very big question. And then management. Do you actually have the ability to manage all of the pieces that go into managing other people's business and ingredients and production and storage and logistics? So there is a lot that goes into it, and we're going to dig in deeper as we go. The next question, ask yourself, what am I offering and who are my target customers and clients? I don't want to go and set up this business if there's no actual demand for it out there, right? So if there's a demand, who is it coming from? Who are these people? What is my ideal client or customer, and how do I approach them and get them to work with me? Costs and pricing. Definitely not simple here, as it's only 2 words here, but that is going to be a big challenge for you to consider. How much is it actually going to cost me to do somebody else's business? I may know my business really, really well, or think that I do. But if I bring in a new product that works on the same equipment, it could be entirely different costing and pricing that goes into the management and the labor and everything that goes into making that product. So again, this is a very nuanced section. We'll dig in as deep as we can on costing and pricing, but I'm sure you'll have a lot more questions, and we'll try to get you as much detail as we can on that. Then lastly, you really have to consider, what are your liabilities? I have someone else in my facility. What am I liable for? I have someone else's food in my facility. What am I liable for? How does food safety play into these things? What do I have to have it buttoned up on my end? Yes, maybe I was getting by with my food safety controls before, but now I have new ingredients, new allergens, new controls that I need to have in place. So food safety, and then lastly, quality assurance. All of these pieces are really integral from the producer's point of view and the manufacturer's point of view. So your clients who are coming to you for manufacturing, they're going to really want to know all the answers to these questions as well. And so it's important that you know this information up front before you go pitching it out or potentially bringing in new clients to your own facility.
Great. And so for understanding fit and business strategy, there are several considerations, and this is just a handful, not all encompassing. And the first one we've outlined here is, do you have a unique manufacturing capability you can market or focus on? So this is really important, is what are you going to be offering? What can you produce? And understanding that very keenly and being able to communicate that to your potential customers. Do you have the capacity to take on business outside of your own brand? This is, Ian just touched on this briefly, but this is very important. And understanding how much time and how much capacity you have to offer somebody outside of your own brand is probably one of the most important things to consider when you're thinking about offering co-packing versus or co-manufacturing. So really sitting down and taking a look at the numbers, how many days a week are you producing, how much can you produce of that unique product, and figuring out how much you have outside of your own production that you're able to offer somebody else. The next point here is, do you have plenty of excess storage capacity? Plenty in all caps here, because if you're going to be producing for somebody else, they're going to be shipping in their raw materials. So that could be packaging, that could be ingredients. And then when you're done producing for them, they'll have finished goods. Some manufacturing facilities have stipulations where they allow their clients to store ingredients, packaging in their facility for a period of time before production and post-production. Then they have stipulations for storage for the finished goods. And most of the manufacturing partners that I work with prefer that the finished product post-production is picked up within a week or two after production. However, there are some exceptions to that where there are facilities that have excess storage capacity and they will store finished goods. And for that, you want to think about how much storage do I have? How much storage do I need? Do I want to charge the customer to store if it's going to be outside of a week or 2 weeks from production? So definitely something to consider there. The next point is, do you have the staffing in place to support a completely separate business model, co-packing, co-manufacturing? So you're an expert in your product, but taking on co-manufacturing as a business, it truly is a completely separate business from making your own product. So do you have the knowledge and expertise to run that type of business? Do you have the staff to support you? What type of staff will you need? Do you need someone who is research and development? Do you need a QA person? Do you need a production manager? Do you need a packaging and logistics person? So thinking through, am I going to offer this? And if so, what are my areas of expertise, and what areas of expertise will I need to look elsewhere to bring someone in on staff to support this new business model?
And I'll just throw in one more piece on an earlier point with the thinking about capacity to take on business outside of your own brand. So this is a very difficult question to answer because you also have to have foresight into the future, into what happens with your own brand. Yes, you may have capacity now, but what is your business plan? Is your business plan to expand and triple your growth of your own product over the next 2 years? In which case, you are no longer going to have the same amount of excess capacity and storage and line time that you may have right now. And you don't want to set up. It could take 6 months to a year to get a client in your doors. You get them in your doors and you get set up. And then in the meantime, your sales are growing. And then you don't have the time to offer them to come into your facility. And in addition to that, that business that's coming into your doors is also looking to grow and expand. And so do you have capacity, but also are you building in that overhead for this brand to grow? Are you partnering with them so that you both grow together and you have the capacity to increase sales on both sides? And are you planning for that increased volume, or are you only looking at what your needs are right now? It's really important to be thinking ahead as to what your future business plan looks like. So continuing on with what are, just more things to think about as you're considering, is co-manufacturing right for me, or what goes into co-manufacturing? Clearly identify which specific capabilities you have. Do you have capacity to manufacture something specific? Are you baking? Are you hot filling? Are you beverage canning? What is it that you are doing specifically that you feel comfortable doing, that you would like or feel comfortable doing for someone else? Maybe you simply have a packaging line where you manufacture a lot, but you sell most of it in bulk, but you have a packaging line set up to do some specific sort of pouch filling or something, just an example, but you don't use it all the time. Maybe you have, 90% of the time, this packaging equipment is sitting idle. Perhaps that could be an opportunity for you to consider, okay, we're just going to offer packaging. Our manufacturing line is full, but we can offer this excess piece of equipment and material and labor here where we can use our packaging equipment and get more bang for our buck out of that piece of equipment. So clearly identify exactly what you have the capacity and capability to do, and then move on from there and considering, is it the right move? And then this next point pretty much flows into exactly what we were just talking. How do you quantify what your available capacity is? How do you actually put numbers around, okay, we are only using this at 40% capacity. We have 60% available. But be wary, again, as I just said in the last slide, of trying to max out exactly what you have. If you go all the way and get all the way full on how much business you have and how much capacity you can hit for manufacturing and packaging, you leave yourself very little room for growth, both on the side of the brand you're working with and your own brand. And so make sure to keep that buffer in there. If you're expecting sales increase, or if you're expecting to launch in a new retailer, or you're pitching a box store to get in and do increased production, you have to have that window of availability open so that you can then fulfill that need if it comes along. Who will manage this new portion of your business? Again, as Jess stated on the last slide, this is a business, and in very, it's very cut and dry that this is a business that needs to be managed and is going to require somebody with knowledge and expertise and the time to put into managing this type of business. If you are the owner and you're operating this manufacturing operation, you think it's going great and you're interested in bringing people in, keep in mind, if you are the one that's planning to manage the co-manufacturing as well, that is a significant time investment. And consider, if you want to do that, who can manage your production. Maybe you have somebody you can put in place to manage your existing business, and that makes it easier for you to transition over. Or are you going to bring in outside help to help you manage it? But keep in mind, it is very unlikely you're going to be able to manage both operations yourself and still, have some time in the day to get anything else done. So how many hours do they have available to dedicate to this? If you're expecting your production manager to just take on this extra work and manage it themselves, that's very unlikely, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on them to do their existing job as well as they had done in the past. So it's a lot to take on, it's a lot of responsibility, and just dropping it on existing employees' shoulders can be very stressful and challenging, and they may not necessarily understand exactly how this new process works, and it can cause a lot of confusion and disruption in production, and that could take a toll on both sides of the business, your own manufacturing and also this new business you're attempting to generate. And then lastly, sort of the same encompassing fact here. Will you need to hire new staff to support this? Likely. I'm saying that now, as unless your staff is part-time now and they're interested in all going full-time or interested in additional days per week that they are looking to work for you, then you will likely need to hire additional staff to support this co-manufacturing or co-packing operation. The last point here that's in the same block, keeping in mind ingredient management, your food safety plan, storage, moving pallets around in the warehouse. All of these things take time and labor hours, specifically in ingredient management. Anytime a co-manufacturer has to bring in new ingredients they don't already carry in-house, that's a pretty significant workload, and they know that up front. And so this is time, this is somebody entering all these ingredients into systems, especially if you're doing non-GMO or GFCO or any certification. They have to have all the data, all the spec sheets, communicate with all the suppliers. Everything has to be set up before they'll even bring these things into their facility. And that all takes time. Right.
Before you go to the, sorry, Ian, before
No,
you go
go
to the
ahead.
next slide, I just wanted to add a couple of things on the first point there. I just wanted to take it back to one of our previous sessions to communicate about the different types of manufacturing models. So tolling and turnkey, if you didn't participate in some of the last sessions, we went through what that means. So in conjunction with identifying the capabilities that you're going to be offering, also understanding and identifying what model of manufacturing you're going to work off of. So tolling would mean that the client or the brand that you're producing for provides you with all of the raw materials, and you just charge them a little price to produce each unit. And then for turnkey, that would mean that you're procuring all of the raw materials on their behalf. So you're buying the ingredients, you're buying the packaging, you're also, providing the labor. Then there's also just bulk producing, which Ian touched on as well, which is maybe you have a packaging line that has some available capacity. You're not going to produce the actual product that's going into the packaging, but you have a packaging line that you can provide to new clients. So just wanted to think on that. And then also working to quantify the available capacity. One way to think about that is, first of all, how many days of the week are you producing? So are you producing 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 7 days a week? And each day, are you producing 8 hours? Are you producing 24 hours? So trying to quantify and think about how many days and how many hours a day you are producing, and that can help figure out what available capacity you have. For example, when I'm going out to try to identify a manufacturing partner for a brand, we're always asking about capacity, and we will say, how many days are you producing and how many shifts? So let's say they say, I'm producing 5 days a week, 1 shift. So that means they're producing maybe Monday through Friday, 8 hours. But that means that they have available capacity because they could produce 7 days, or they could produce the second and third shift, which is, overnight. So understanding what your availability is and what the capacity is based on how many days of the week and how many hours a day you can produce. Great. So furthering this, speaking about products, services, and target customers and considerations for that. So the first one we have here is clearly identify what products you have the capabilities to produce. So this is a little bit of redundancy here. We've kind of talked about this, but understanding, let's say you are currently producing a baked product. What type of baked product is it? What type of ovens do you have? Do you have tunnel ovens? Are you doing slab production for bars? Cold, heat, all of those things. You really need to identify what pieces of equipment you have and what the capabilities they have, what types of products they can produce, and clearly marketing that and communicating that to any potential customers that you're going to be working with. The next point here is what additional services will you offer? For example, manufacturing, packaging, bulk packing, pick and pack, palletizing, logistics, distribution, et cetera. So let's go through each of these. So manufacturing, obviously, are you going to be manufacturing that, or are you just going to be packaging something for people? Bulk packing is what we just spoke about. So for example, I worked with a puffed snack brand who was producing in one facility and then moving those bulk puffs into another facility to be packaged because the manufacturing facility did not have the packaging equipment to be able to pack the puffs in retail packaging. So that's something to consider. Pick and pack means once the product is actually produced, are you going to offer services to put them into, let's say somebody wants to have a 6-pack and an 8-pack for retail. So are you going to put 6 of those units into a box or 8 of those units into a box? Are you going to do mixed pallets for them to go out to their distribution partner? Or are you just going to put everything on one pallet, no mixed pallets, and think about what services you're going to offer and also what staff you would have to support that and what the cost would be to the brand if you offer those services. Logistics is, are you going to be working with potentially an LTL, a trucking company to ship the finished product back to the customer or over to their distribution partner or to retail, and thinking through that full supply chain and what pieces of that supply chain you are going to offer to the brands that you're going to work with. The next point is, who will your target customer be and how will you reach them? This is very important. And I think this is an area that a lot of manufacturing partners fall short on from my experience, is who do you want to work with? Do you want to work with other brands that are producing similar products to yours? Do you want to private label for a grocery store? And really trying to identify who the customers are. Do you want to work with small brands? Do you want to work with large national brands? And how are you going to market this new service and business offering that you have to those potential customers? Are you going to attend trade shows? Are you going to participate in marketing ads or things like that? But really being pretty specific and really thinking ahead about who the target customer will be and how you might potentially reach them. The last point here is certifications. Which do you currently have and which would you be willing to achieve or lose if necessary to bring on new clients? So this means both facility certifications and product certifications. So for your facility, are you going to go for SQF, which is a food safety program that puts a process in place to run your facility according to a certain set of guidelines? And if you're working with a brand that is selling nationally at retail, it's likely that they're going to want your facility to be SQF certified. It's a long process. It's gotten longer because of the pandemic. So it's something that you want to think about and understand what that would mean for your facility. And then there's other types of facility certifications as well that you can consider. But on the product side of things, are you going to offer organic, kosher, halal, vegan, gluten-free? And what does that mean for your facility? Do you have to have segregated separate rooms, or can you produce in the same room? Ian, I don't know if you wanted to touch on that as well.
Yeah, happy to dig into that more. So when it comes to certifications, you have your brand in your facility, and you may be operating in a certain way, but maybe you're at 25% capacity, and that's okay. But you're thinking, hey, I have all this capacity, I could bring in a new client, And let's see, and you get into conversations and you get talking about their product and you think, hey, this could be a great relationship, but they don't have kosher ingredients and you have a kosher certification on your product in your facility. Are you willing to give that up? Does that affect your consumer base and the people that are used to purchasing your product? Is it okay for you to ditch your kosher certification in order to bring in this client, which then allows you to be producing at 75% capacity and doing a lot more work and building up your business in a much stronger capacity? Is that okay with you, or is it not? Is it a no-go? I think most of the time, if you go to a larger co-manufacturer and you don't meet, your ingredients don't meet, or your product doesn't meet the certifications that they currently have at that facility, it's unlikely it's going to be a fit. They will probably turn you away and say, sorry, every ingredient that comes in this door has to come with a GFSI level food safety audit from the supplier. It has to come with a kosher certification, or it has to come with, et cetera, along the list in order to even bring that ingredient in the facility. And so that's up to you. If you are thinking about it from the co-manufacturer's point of view, you have to do the same thing. You have to say, look, these are our guidelines. Here is what ingredients have to conform to before they come into our facility. If not, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work because I can't afford to give that up on my end. Also, if you want to go the other direction and achieve a certification, like as Jess said, with SQF, that is at minimum a part-time person on staff to manage that SQF audit, facility, paperwork, everything. Now, there are consultants that do it that will come part-time and will help you manage. Maybe they'll stop by the facility once every couple of weeks or something and help you update your paperwork and keep it managed. But if you're going to do it internally, I mean, again, that is a person you're paying on your staff to manage that, all the paperwork. It's a lot of work that goes into it. It's no joke. And all the, managing the ingredients and the spec sheets and everything that goes along with that. And time is money at each of these points. So each decision you make comes with an associated cost. So again, this is one of those good points where we like to mention that, hey, through the eyes of the manufacturer, that's why they ask these questions. That's why they require these certain stipulations, because it's important to the integrity of their products and what their clients are expecting, but also at the bottom, there's the bottom line. It costs money to bring in these new ingredients. It costs time and it's difficult, and it could affect the way their operations run. So they have to be diligent up front to make sure that it's going to be in line with their current process. So understanding costing and pricing, there's only 3 lines here, but obviously a million more questions as we've mentioned in the past around same thing with COGS models and any financial planning. There's a lot more nuance to each of these items that we could go into. Feel free to ask questions. We'll answer to the best of our ability. But upfront, you want to work with an experienced finance or accounting expert to help you understand what are the additional costs that are going to go into co-manufacturing and co-packing. We've, probably belabored this at this point, but all the staff and time and extra effort that's going to go into getting these clients set up in your system, even the amount of time it takes to vet a client before they come in costs money. R&D time. Are you going to offer R&D days for free? That is an entire day that you have to take your equipment down and run it for someone else with a product that may not work. It may take 6 R&D days. And at that point, maybe you offer some for free, maybe you don't. Maybe you charge up front and you just keep it above board. And that way people know what they're getting into when they start working with you. It all depends on how you want to model it. But work with somebody who has been down this road before. Talk to somebody who's in finance or accounting who can help you understand where, how much cash flow is coming in. Where do you have to set your margins in order to make this a profitable business? Where do you have to set, this is where certain things come up, such as minimum order quantities. And again, that's sort of the dreaded thing that people learn the first time they speak with a co-manufacturer. I know Jess has mentioned this before. The first thing that comes up is, what are your MOQs, right? And that is because from the manufacturer's point of view, they have to set a certain limit where they know if they're going to make money on this, which is the whole point, it's a business. If they're going to make money on it, they have to meet a certain threshold of production to make sense to bring in a new, smaller partner to help them grow. Now, that's not the cut and dry of it. There are plenty of times where we've seen people, finagle, hey, we'll meet the MOQ over the course of 2 months instead of 1, or over the course of a year, and allow us the time to maybe do about up to half of that. And then the next year we'll absolutely meet the minimums. And that all happens in contract negotiations. And again, from the business side of you, from the manufacturer, you have to decide if you're willing to take that risk on this company. This is a new partner you're bringing under your roof. Do you think that they will be able to hit these numbers? You need to be able to evaluate not only your own numbers in considering co-manufacturing, but also you want to know business data of that client that's coming in. And do they have their stuff together in order, are their financials okay? Because that's going to affect you as well. And that's all going to go into understanding your business model and how this is going to play out. So the next line down here, put together a thorough cost analysis to identify each cost associated with the new business. How many new ingredients are coming in the door? How many, maybe they have 4 sets of different packaging. They have an inner pack and an outer pack, and then packaging materials, that puff packs that go into it. And so they end up having 4 pallets worth of packaging material that you didn't anticipate because you only use 1 case for yours, right? And so all of these things are associated costs, storage, labor, everything that goes along with it. So put together a thorough cost analysis and identify which items on these lists cost you money to bring somebody else in the door. And then determine how you're going to price your co-packing, co-manufacturing services. Cost plus model, percent margin, overhead, all of these items need to go into multiple spreadsheets so that you can identify every scenario that might make sense, and of course the ones that don't. And that's how you establish your MOQs. That's how you establish what size of business makes the most sense for you to consider as a partner. That's how you determine which products and which ingredients and which certifications for an existing client makes sense for you to allow in the door in the first place. All of these things come associated with costs, and then this gives you your own set of vetting material to vet your clients. So again, this is looking at this from both sides of the table. The past 2 weeks, we've been talking about what it looks like from the client perspective to get into a co-manufacturer. And now we're looking at it from the co-manufacturer's point of view of, okay, which clients actually make sense for me to partner with, because I have to make my business viable. I have to make money on this. Even if I want to support this business, there has to be a path and a route to market that's going to make sense for this to be a profitable business in the future. And Jess, if you want to, you probably have some more insight in the cost models and things. I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. There are so many things to consider, but when I'm working with a brand who's looking to identify a new manufacturing partner, we go out to potential manufacturers and ask for preliminary price quotes. Sometimes those manufacturing partners are very transparent about how they price. So what type of model, which Ian just kind of went over, is it a cost plus, is it a percent of margin, overhead, and they break that down for you, which is ideal. That means to me that the manufacturing partner truly understands all of the components of the pieces of the business that they will be doing for you and what those costs are. And it gives the brand insight into what if one of those components changes, their rent goes up or an ingredient cost goes up. So I think getting as detailed as possible on your end is really important. Do you have to be super transparent with the brands that you work in and share everything, meaning, what you pay for overhead and labor and all the things, those things? You don't. I find it to be better, but it really is your choice what you want to share with the potential customers and clients that you're going to be working with. Other things to consider, I think, which is maybe on the next slide, Ian, but on the contracting side of things, that's also a cost. So if you are going to offer contracts to your potential customers and clients, are you going to have a legal team that's going to put that together? Is that legal team going to review the contract every time you have a new potential customer that you're going to work with? Because inevitably they're going to want to change something in that contract. So thinking through all of the costs associated with bringing on a new client is very important, and understanding what all of those components are.
Jess, that was a good point, and I started to talk about it and I got distracted during what I was saying earlier. But
No.
the associated costs with attempting to bring on clients, and they're not all going to work out. I mean, so many times I've gone through weeks, even months of R&D and back and forth negotiations and conversations. So you bring in that one part of the team, and then you bring in sales, and then you bring in business development, and all these different pieces. And at the end of the day, you might not even end up moving forward with that manufacturer. But from the manufacturer's point of view, you just spent weeks of people's time and potentially R&D and emails, and somebody's vetting regulatory materials and ingredient paperwork, and it doesn't come to fruition. That all costs you as a business a lot of money to go through that whole vetting process. Yes, it's important and has to be done. At the end of the day, you do that 5 or 6 times. That's a lot of people's time over the course of a couple months that goes into these business decisions that don't end up panning out. And so that it may come across sometimes as a little bit harsh from the point of view of the manufacturer looking towards a client, when, you know, that's when sometimes that MOQ conversation comes up and they just say, sorry, see ya, not going to work. Or they just say, sorry, our capacity's full. We're not bringing on new brands, especially for the, you know, like the really larger manufacturers that have specific equipment that maybe it's required, even if you're a small brand, to get into something like that. If they, you know, if you are not the right fit for who knows what reason, they might just say, sorry, we just don't have the capacity to work with an early stage brand right now. And that's, you know, unfortunately, you're out of luck, and you have to move on. And that can be really challenging from a client perspective. But from the business side of the manufacturer, this takes time and money and all these setup materials. And if you don't make it through that, that's just gone, and they lose that, and that's out the door. So it's an investment that they're making, and they have to be very secure in the investment that they're making in this smaller brand to help bring them in the door and get them using their equipment.
And yeah, that's a great point, Ian. And on that note, I've seen lots of different scenarios there for the manufacturer to sort of cover their risk during that process. And some of the things that I've seen are that a manufacturer who's vetting and considering and working with a new brand will charge a fee to go through the recipe development or the setup process. If the brand decides that they are no longer going to move forward to production, then that money, they're out that money. However, if they move forward and they sign a contract and they begin working with that manufacturing partner, a lot of times the manufacturer will credit back that sort of setup or R&D fee to the first production run. So it's something to think about that could mitigate your risk if you are looking to bring on new clients. And also the other thing to consider, if this is a new business model for you, you've never offered co-manufacturing before, obviously, as you're getting ramped up and set up and you have your first customer and your second customer, things will take longer. But once you're going and it's a proven out model that you're going to continue working on, things will get easier, and you will have a much shorter, easier time vetting potential clients because you're going to know exactly what you're going to look for. So it should get easier as you continue down the path to offering co-manufacturing. Okay, great. So moving on to contracts, which we sort of just touched on. So liability contracts, food safety, and quality assurance, all major considerations to think through if you're going to offer co-manufacturing, co-packing. So the first one here, work with an experienced insurance broker or company to determine what type of liability coverage you should hold. So this is both for you and also for the client and the brand. Most manufacturing partners hold a certain amount of insurance for their facility itself, and then also liability insurance. God forbid if something happens, like there's a recall, somebody gets sick, something terrible happens, but also you should require that the client and the customer that you're working with also holds their own liability insurance, and you have to determine what that amount is going to be and what it will cover. And so speaking with an experienced insurance broker is really important, and just asking, other people within the industry, who do you use? Have you had a good experience with? Get a couple of quotes because they can vary greatly. And understand what your options are, but making sure that you have that in place before you start working with anybody so that you're completely covered is very important. Similarly, the second point here is work with an experienced attorney to help draw up your contracts. Equally as important, making sure that you're covered legally if something happens. I work with a lot of brands and a lot of manufacturing partners, and I get asked a lot of questions about, legal advice. And I always say, I'm not an attorney. However, I have looked at a lot of contracts. So I can look at a contract because I've been doing this for a long time and I can see what the red flags are. I can help point out what you should be aware of and what you should look for, but nothing replaces actual legal counsel. So you need to have a lawyer or a legal team that is helping you draw up your contracts that you're going to offer to your potential clients, and then advise you if anything comes up throughout that process. And like I mentioned when we were on the last slide, is every time you give a contract to a potential customer, there's going to be back and forth. They're going to redline something out of it and say, like, take this out, add this in. And it's important to always have somebody available to you that is legal counsel that can review any of those changes before you accept them and change the contract that you shared with the potential client. The next point here is ensure you have an experienced QA food safety manager on your team for co-packing, co-manufacturing oversight of every project and production run. This is incredibly important. And I have seen some facilities fall short in this area. Making sure that you have somebody who truly understands QA, which stands for quality assurance, and food safety. And that person is either an internal member of your team, or they're an outsourced person that's available for the production runs. And so making sure that's also an added cost, but making sure somebody on your team has those that expertise and those capabilities. And maybe it's somebody that already works for you and they go through a course and they get certified, or maybe it's a new hire that you find elsewhere. And Ian, I'm sure you have some points to add on that as well.
Yeah, just to continue stressing it, how important it is, from both sides of the coin, right? So again, from the view of the client coming into a new facility, I want to know that there's somebody there who's taking it, under their purview to make sure that my product coming off the line is adherent to certain specs and quality and gold standard that I set out to begin with. And if that is not there, that's a red flag, really, for any co-manufacturer to not have that person identified or not have those bases covered when you go to work with somebody. And this QA food safety manager, not only are they running product quality of product coming off the line and finished product, but they're also managing all the ingredient paperwork and things coming in the door. They might not be the office manager handling it and filing it, but they're reviewing it. They know ingredients, they know suppliers, they know verification for suppliers, they know distributors. This person is very, very key. And again, this is one of those things you have to consider if you are an owner operator of your facility and you're thinking about co-manufacturing. Are you that QA and food safety person, or is this a separate person as you begin to expand and offer new services? Likely it is, because again, there's a lot that is covered by this. There's a lot of hours that go into these things, and it's very important. But again, if you're offering a service to a client, they should be looking for this QA food safety manager. They should be looking for that person and expertise on this platform, because it's really important to making sure that their product is going to be what they're expecting every single time it comes off the line, because that's their business. Their clients are their consumers are looking for the same product every time. They're looking for it to be safe, unadulterated, nothing wrong with it, packaged the same, look the same, and be of the same quality every time. And you have to make sure there's somebody managing that on the side of the manufacturing.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I have a couple of anecdotal horror stories that I'm happy to share on the QA side, and I'm sure you do too, Ian. But I've been in a lot of manufacturing facilities, and even if you have a QA food safety person, you want to make sure that that person is good. Because they may not be. And for example, I was in a facility that was producing some snacks, and I was standing right next to the QA person on the line, and a screw came off of a piece of equipment and was flowing down the line towards the packaging going into the snack bag, and nobody flagged it. And so, seeing that, firsthand, you're thinking, okay, this person is here, they're certified, they're qualified, but they're clearly not paying attention. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind as well as you're interviewing and thinking about who this person is going to be and how dialed in they are going to be on the line. Additionally, to Ian's point, somebody who understands food safety. And so for a lot of products, that includes taking some type of testing measurement. So potentially maybe you're taking the pH of a product during production and ensuring that that pH meets the target every time, because if it doesn't and the product gets packaged later on, even though it looks like it's safe, later on, it can become unsafe for the consumer. And I have seen that happen where somebody who was on the line, who was meant to be testing the pH, did not have the knowledge that they needed to have in order to test it accurately. And then the product gets packaged, and later you find out that, the package explodes, or it becomes rancid, or, it goes bad. And you don't find that out till later. And that causes a lot of problems down the line. So making sure that you're setting up your QA and food safety accurately and efficiently from the start will save you time, money, headache later on. So it's incredibly important to button that up from the start.
And there's different ways you can do that too. I find it's, if you have the ability from the client point of view. So I'm the brand owner, I'm going to a co-manufacturer, and even from the co-manufacturer's point of view, they should request this and want this as well, to have laminated sheets of a picture of either each stage of the process, or at the very least, your finished products, as, hey, here is what the gold standard finished product should look like before it goes into a package. Here's what it should look like as a finished package, and be able to post that in the packing area or the pack out area or different stages. Again, that gets a little difficult. Maybe there's a binder that has them instead of posting on the wall, depending on the type of facility it is. But having things as simple as actual pictures, there may be language barriers. Even a very qualified QA manager may not necessarily even speak English or have the same, be speaking the same language. Doesn't mean they're not qualified, but pictures and things can be very helpful tools to communicate what exactly your product should be coming off the line. And that's very important. And from the facility's point of view, you should want those things, because the more information you have, you can see it as a design contract, right? The more information I have from you, it is exactly what this should be and look like and taste like and smell like, then the more I can make sure that I'm creating the correct specs of the product and ensure that it's accurate going out the door. So it may seem silly to put those things on paper and use pictures like that, but it can be incredibly valuable on the manufacturing floor to have those resources available.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Ian. And I've helped brands put those together. And you, from my perspective, you want to have pictures of what it should look like in the gold standard and pictures of what it shouldn't look like also.
Yeah.
So like, this is unacceptable, this is acceptable. So, for like something that's in a pouch, form, fill, and seal, showing, that it should be equally sealed on all four sides, and there's no openings, there's no leaking, anything like that. So I think that's incredibly important. And I always advise brands to put that together. Whether the manufacturing partner uses it, that's on them, but hopefully they do. So some type of standard operating procedure that shows your gold standard. And also, are you going to allow the customer, client, or brand to be in the facility when you're producing? And if so, that's another way to kind of ensure quality, is having that person who it's their product taste it, approve it, and gives you another added level of protection. Alternatively, if the brand or the client or the customer is not there, or they don't attend production, typically I see manufacturing facilities ship product overnight to the brand, customer, or client for them to approve before that product actually ships out of their facility.
And again, that totally flows into liability, responsibility. As the manufacturer, I want to be sure this isn't going to pose a problem later. So the quicker I can get the okay, get it on paper, get it in writing, get this product to the client, and hey, is this to spec? Is everything okay? Let's figure this out now, than sooner than 3 months down the road when something comes up. So the more communication and verification that you can get at the early stages, the safer both parties are going to be further down the line. And that's it. So yeah, shorter slideshow today, but plenty of time for questions. I think there's a few in the chat here.
Yeah.
Answered one about insurance. I don't know if there's one before that.
Take a look here.
Looks like those have been answered. There's a good resource for selling the kettle, Jess. There's a few other online resources and websites, like bakery equipment or different things where you can get products like that listed and sell through resellers, which is nice. Liability, so listing additionally insured, even like Whole Foods will sometimes ask you to do that on your your own insurance. So certain, definitely a commonplace for manufacturing partners to be listed as additionally insured on your liability policy. Is there a niche or opportunity setting up to cater to small startup brands looking for a manufacturing partner who get rejected by larger co-packers? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Go ahead, Jess. You do all this a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, to answer your question, Paul, yes, that's the short answer. And that has become even more prevalent in the last couple of years during the pandemic, because these large manufacturing partners are labor constrained. And typically they've made decisions to work with larger brands because it's easier for them to have guaranteed production. So they've kind of pushed out some of the small to mid-sized brands. And there are a lot of small brands who are looking for manufacturing partners, and they typically can't meet the MOQ, the minimum order quantity, of some of the larger facilities. So I absolutely think that there is an opportunity to cater to smaller brands. However, that comes with some challenges and headaches as well. And Ian touched on that earlier, meaning, what do you need to cover to ensure that you're covering your costs to make money to work with smaller brands? So great question. Short answer is yes. Happy to dive into that more. If you want to send me an email, we could have a call post the webinar and kind of talk through all of the points about that to consider.
Yeah, I'll just mention one more thing there, which is it has its own unique challenges. One of which is when you're working with those smaller stage brands, and yes, we want to help them, and yes, we want to help them grow, and ideally, all businesses are trying to grow and expand and increase sales. But with that can potentially mean you're sort of creating a self-defeating cycle of they come in and they grow and then they're out, and then you have a hole again that you need to fill with a new client and get them in the door. And so, you have to find out what's the right cadence, what's the right size of business, how many can you handle at any given time, and what point do you have to say, hey, look, you need to go, you're ready to go to a bigger manufacturer, and hopefully not leave yourself in a financial hole by letting somebody else come in, take up too much of your time, and then when they leave, you're stuck trying to scramble to fill that time again. So it's a delicate balance. Again, as Jess said, we could dig in way further on a separate call some other time.
Yeah, and actually, I'll just add one more thing is, considering yourself, a pilot production facility or kind of like an incubator is a good way to market yourself towards smaller brands. And I have seen some facilities do this where they charge a higher rate to offer that service to run, for smaller brands, because they have to make money, and the brands are willing to pay that higher rate because they want to get their product produced, and they understand that in the short term it's going to cost them more, but as they scale and move to a larger facility, they will hopefully bring those costs down. So it's definitely something to consider, and it's not unusual to see smaller facilities charging a higher rate in order to produce at that lower volume.
Yeah, and the knowledge you gain from even scaling up to maybe just one step higher, you learn what new pieces of equipment do to your dough, your product, or your beverage, or however it works. And so it can be invaluable information that you gather, even though it costs you a little more, that you get that information, you get that knowledge, and then you take it to the next step. Yeah, it can be certainly worth that higher cost.
Oh, and I see Paul, asked a follow-up question. Are there any facilities like this now? Yes, there are throughout the country, and they're dependent upon what type of product that they're producing. So I've worked with, I'm sure you have too, Ian, pilot beverage manufacturing facilities. On the East Coast, there are a couple. There's one that I know of in New Hampshire called Genuine Local. They're sort of small to mid-size, but they have a niche kind of doing that for like local farms in the New Hampshire area. In New York State, there are a couple as well that produce kind of acidified hot fill products on the small batch side, which is actually a really easy capability to manufacture, in my opinion. In Maine, I'd have to think through that, Ian, to think about if there are some pilot facilities or smaller facilities. What typically happens is brands work with commercial kitchens. So they'll produce in their own kitchen for a period of time, then they move into a commercial kitchen space that can sort of support that, farmers market, regional production, and then they're looking for that next step, which is moving to a co-packer. And there are less manufacturers that are on the small side there. than not. So they do exist, but oh yes, and Bill's pointing out Fork Food Lab, of course. Sorry, top of mind there. But and we're excited for your new capabilities as well, Bill.
Yeah, a couple of facilities like that. It's often a good thing to bring up to a university too. So there's university pilot plants, which can be really valuable resources. Rutgers, I mean, UMaine has the pilot plant. That's, you know, Rob's doing some great things up there, trying to get new pieces of equipment going and interesting stuff, interesting capabilities. But yeah, there's a lot of resources. We're happy. If you have more specific questions, feel free to reach out. We can point. It's all industry specific too, right? It depends on what you're actually trying to do, and we could point you in the right direction to what we know of. Next question, do you have a standard from Alan Nye? Do you have a standard co-packing, co-manufacturing contract or template you can provide or cite to? It's pretty, I mean, most contracts are going to be really specific to the organization. There's just an element of standardized language in each of them. I mean, they're contract manufacturing agreements. I am probably not at liberty to share any that I have simply because they're all proprietary to the manufacturing facility. Could answer specific questions about them on a call maybe, but I probably wouldn't be able to share contracts. Jess,
Yeah.
can you think of a template, or I can't really?
I might have something. So I'm just going to drop my my email in the chat here. And if you want to send me an email, I'll look through and see if I have anything generic that I'm able to share. But to Ian's point, typically, you know, we're under NDA and most of the contracts that we have are proprietary to either the brand or the facility. But I'll see if I have something that's generic that I can share. And if not, you know, reaching out to a legal team or potentially, you know, other manufacturing facilities in your area and saying, hey, do you have something that I could take a look at? And there probably are some sites online that have generic templates, but I haven't used one personally. So I'll take a look through what I have and maybe I can offer some help there.
Next question from Wayne Oxton. In your experience, what's an acceptable margin percent in overhead range? I mean, in many ways, it's similar to your regular business model, right? As Jess has said before, if you can get above that 40% margin on what you're doing to cover your overhead, to cover your employees and your staff and sanitation and everything that goes into it, you know, that 40 to 70% range margin, like, yeah, that would be great. That is a functioning business model for money coming in the door that's covering your costs and everything that goes into it. Have we seen partnerships where, you know, if a co-manufacturer feels really confident in the relationship with a new client, that they share that data and say, hey, look, we're willing to drop it to 30 to start with to help you, you know, bear some of the burden of the upfront cost to get started. And as you increase your volume and output, then we also increase with you and we share in the profits as we move forward. Again, doesn't happen all the time. Most people are going to set a base limit of probably around the 40 to 50% margin range that they need to be at to cover their costs, and then, you know, share profits from there. But yeah, that's pretty typical of the 40 to 70%, same way as you would in your own retail business with your own products.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned before that you know, different manufacturing facilities charge in different models. So it's important to consider that. And if you're considering offering sort of small batch or pilot co-packing, potentially maybe you're looking to charge just a day rate. So that would be sort of your MOQ, is that you charge a certain rate for a brand to work in your facility for a day, and that's it. Doesn't matter if they produce 1 unit or they produce 10,000 units, and you charge a rate for that day, and that's what they pay, and that's how you cover your costs. But the higher margin, the better for any type of business, obviously. That means that you're hopefully going to be financially successful and it'll be a worthwhile endeavor. But the other thing to consider is when you're thinking about what margin you're going to charge or what your, you know, fees are going to be, go out and do sort of a competitive analysis to see what other manufacturing facilities are charging in your area. Because if you don't do that and you just put out your rates and they're wildly higher than somebody else or much lower, then that will have an impact on your potential business and growth. So I think it's important to look at the landscape as well.
Next question from Old Haven Farm. How do you get the word out there that you're now co-manufacturing? I have some word of mouth ideas, but are there lists out there available to people or certain groups we should make sure we are a part of? I think in slideshow 1, we had a list of resources. Most of them have, if you go to their websites, you can find, a contact where you can maybe ask to be put on the list. I think something that's really important for search engine optimization is having somewhere on your website say co-manufacturing specifically, because a lot of people are just going to be Google searching, including Jess and I at certain times if we have to, right? So, including it on your website, your company website is important. The social media, Facebooks of the world are great places to throw it up there. But having it listed on your website somewhere is important. And then contacting the people that have these lists, contacting universities, UMaine Extension, right? They if they had somebody they could point to, that would be great. They would appreciate having you as a resource. So universities, extension programs, those lists, the rodeo and other lists that we had in that first slideshow, which should be in the Google Drive, right, Sue? So yeah, feel free to
Yeah,
go
we
through
actually,
there.
yep, we actually loaded a separate slide with the list of ideas there, the list of the ones that you
Okay.
guys recommended.
Oh,
So
yep.
that's-
Tanya
That's
just
great.
sent the link to it.
Yeah, there are a lot of lists that you could be a part of. There's some groups online that you could participate in. Then there's obviously trade shows that you could go to, walk the floor, introduce yourselves, to brands, and also just networking amongst the supply chain within the CPG industry. So speaking to design agencies, speaking to packaging suppliers, ingredient suppliers, and letting them know that this is a new capability that you're offering. And then if they have somebody that comes to them, they can think of you top of mind. So I think just networking within the industry is important as well, in addition to putting yourself out on some of these lists.
I think that's it for questions in the chat. But you have our contact information. Something else comes up, as we've said each time, we are always open to answering an email, phone call, any question we can answer. Please feel free to reach out. We're both, part of the Maine Mentor Network for the Maine MCE, Maine Center for Entrepreneurs. So we're always here to help and happy to be a resource for any business out there.
Big thanks to Ian and Jess for sharing their expertise and insights over the last 3 weeks. Thanks everyone for joining us for this year's series.